Darren was not like other men. He had built his fortune on earth through bold ideas, dangerous risks, and an endless hunger for discovery. While others spent their riches on palaces or endless pleasures, Darren used his money to buy ships. His ships were not small. They were vast, powerful vessels built to cross the endless dark between the stars. When he left Earth, many thought he was wasting his life. But Darren did not care. He had everything he wanted already except one thing. He wanted to see what was beyond the edge of known space. The galaxy was crowded with alien empires, great councils, and merchant guilds. Humans were newcomers compared to them. Many species looked down on humanity. They called humans reckless, greedy, or fragile. Darren knew the whispers. He had heard the laughter of alien traders who thought humans could never rise. But Darren had something that most of them did not: vision. His flagship, Aurora, was more than a ship. It was a floating city, carrying explorers, scientists, and workers. Among them was a woman named Myra. She was not a fighter, not a commander, not even a scientist. She worked quietly as a caretaker on the ship, handling simple tasks others ignored. Many hardly noticed her. But Darren noticed everything. Darren had lived long enough to see greed eat away at friendships. He had seen men betray their brothers for gold, women abandon their oaths for power, and entire worlds crumble because of lies. Wealth could build civilizations, but it could also destroy them. That was why Darren trusted no one fully. Trust, to him, was rarer than diamonds. One evening, as Aurora drifted near the border of alien space, Darren sat alone in his grand chamber. His quarters were filled with rare objects from across the galaxy: crystals from the rings of Avarin, carvings from the sand world Kesh, even a blade said to be forged by a vanished race. But the greatest treasure was not art. It was the simple, universal symbol of power: credits. He opened a black case and stared at it. Inside were stacked plates of glowing crystal currency, worth 250,000 credits. Enough to buy a fleet of ships. Enough to change any person's life forever. He tapped the case thoughtfully, his eyes narrowing. Myra, he whispered. She was quiet, obedient, loyal, or so she seemed. But Darren wanted to know what lay beneath that calm face. Was she loyal because she had nothing else? Or was she truly one of the rare ones who could not be bought? He stood and, with slow hands, scattered the glowing credits across his wide bed. They sparkled in the dim light like fallen stars. The room looked like a treasure hoard from ancient legends. He left them there, plain to see, impossible to ignore. Then Darren activated the hidden recorder in the wall. His test was set. The next morning, he left his quarters unlocked on purpose. He gave the crew their tasks and told Myra to tidy the chamber later. She nodded simply, as always, and went about her work. Hours later, Myra entered the grand room. She stopped in her tracks. The bed was covered in wealth beyond measure. Glowing plates of credit spilled like a river of light, scattered without care. Myra's eyes widened. She stepped closer, then looked around the room as if expecting a trick. No one was there. Only silence. Her heart beat faster. Any other worker might have thought of taking a little, just one plate, just a single piece. Who would notice? It was enough to live free for years, to escape a life of labor. But Myra stood still. She took a long breath and shook her head. Instead of touching the wealth with greedy hands, she found a container from the corner of the room. Carefully, piece by piece, she gathered every glowing plate and placed it inside. Her hands were steady. She did not keep even one. When all the credits were safe, she closed the container and locked it. Then she took a scrap of paper and wrote a note in her neat, small handwriting. "You left this behind. I kept it safe." She placed the note on the closed container and left the room quietly, as if nothing had happened. From the hidden recorder, Darren watched the entire scene. At first, he leaned forward, expecting betrayal. But as the minutes passed, his eyes narrowed, then widened. When Myra left the chamber without taking a single coin, Darren sat back in his chair. For the first time in many years, a slow smile spread across his face. "She is different," he murmured. In that moment, Darren realized something important. Gold, credits, treasures, these things could be stolen, lost, or destroyed. But loyalty, true loyalty, could not be bought. And Myra had just shown him the rarest treasure of all. The next day on the Aurora, life moved as normal. Crew members hurried along bright corridors, engineers checked the engines, and traders prepared for the next market stop. No one knew what had taken place in Darren's quarters the night before. No one except Darren. He sat in his private office, the container of credits resting on the desk in front of him. The note that Myra had written lay beside it. Her words were simple, yet they struck him deeper than any deal or bargain he had made in his long life. "You left this behind." "I kept it safe." Darren turned the note over in his hand again and again. It was not just the act of honesty that surprised him. It was the calmness in her choice. There had been no hesitation in her movements, no lingering touch on the credits, no hungry look in her eyes. She had treated a fortune as if it were nothing more than scattered stones. He pressed a button on his desk. "Bring Myra to me." Moments later, the door opened, and Myra entered quietly. She looked the same as always, plain clothing, hair tied back, calm eyes that never revealed much. She bowed slightly, waiting for his command. "You found something in my chamber yesterday," Darren said slowly. Myra did not flinch. "Yes. You left the credits on your bed. I thought it was dangerous to leave them like that, so I placed them safely in the container. You did not think to keep even one." His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp, watching every flicker of her expression. Myra shook her head. "They are not mine. Taking what is not mine would only bring me shame. Trust is worth more than coins." Darren leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Do you know how much those credits were worth?" She shook her head again. "No, sir. I did not count them. It made no difference." Darren almost laughed. "No difference? To most beings in the galaxy, even a single plate of credit was enough to buy freedom, power, or comfort." Yet Myra dismissed it as if she had been guarding scraps of paper. "You surprise me," Darren said. She looked puzzled. "Why, sir? It was the right thing to do." He leaned forward, resting his hands on the desk. "You may not realize this, but across the stars, loyalty is rare. Empires rise and fall because of greed. Allies betray each other for wealth. Even kings will trade away their crowns if enough treasure is offered. Yet you walked away from a fortune without hesitation. Why?" Myra thought for a moment before speaking. "Because if I took even one coin, I would lose something far greater. Trust cannot be repaired once it is broken. You gave me work, safety, and a place here on this ship. That is worth more than money." Her words were plain, but to Darren, they carried the weight of truth. He had met rulers who spoke in grand speeches, merchants who promised loyalty in exchange for wealth, and leaders who dressed their greed in clever lies. None of them had sounded as powerful as Myra in that moment. For a long time, Darren said nothing. He simply looked at her, as though trying to read every hidden layer of her soul. Finally, he nodded. "You have passed a test," he said. Myra frowned. "A test?" "Yes. I left those credits scattered on purpose. I wanted to see what you would do." Her eyes widened in shock. For the first time, Myra looked unsettled. You tested me." "Yes," Darren said firmly. "I had to know who I could trust. On this ship, we face dangers greater than pirates or storms. We deal with alien councils, smugglers, and sometimes assassins. Wealth is a weapon, and temptation is a trap. I needed to see if you could resist it. Myra lowered her eyes, silent for a moment. Then she said softly, I see. And now you know my answer. Yes, Darren said with a rare smile. Now I know your answer. The moment stretched between them. For the first time, Myra realized that Darren, the billionaire who owned fleets and treasures, looked at her not as a servant, but as something else, someone whose loyalty could change the course of his journey. Go back to your duties, Darren said at last, though his voice was gentler now. But remember this, your choice has already shaped more than you know. Myra bowed and left quietly. When the door closed, Darren leaned back again, lost in thought. He had expected betrayal, or at least hesitation. He had prepared himself for disappointment. Instead, he found something far more valuable than wealth. And as the Aurora continued its voyage toward alien space, Darren began to wonder how this small act of honesty might ripple outward. In a galaxy ruled by greed and power, the rare loyalty of one quiet woman might one day change everything. The Aurora sailed through deep space, its shining hull cutting across the stars like a silver blade. Weeks had passed since Myra had returned the fortune untouched, but Darren could not forget it. He spoke little of the test, yet in quiet moments his mind returned to the memory of her calm hands, carefully placing each glowing credit into the container. One evening, Darren stood with his second officer, Tomasz, on the viewing deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them, sharp and cold, yet filled with promise. Tomasz, Darren said, do you believe loyalty still exists in this galaxy? The officer chuckled bitterly. Among the old stories, perhaps. But in truth? No. The guilds sell their oaths for a handful of credits. Even the council bends its laws when gold is offered. Loyalty is a dream, nothing more. Darren's eyes hardened. I thought so too. But I may have been wrong. He told Tomasz of Myra's choice. The officer listened with growing disbelief, shaking his head. She walked away from that much wealth. Impossible. No one does that. I saw it with my own eyes, Darren replied firmly. She did not even hesitate. The news spread quietly among the crew. At first, whispers filled the corridors, she gave it back. All of it? Some laughed, calling her foolish. Others stared in wonder, trying to imagine turning away from such fortune. Myra herself stayed silent, carrying out her duties as if nothing had changed. But when the Aurora docked at the great trading hub of Vera Station, the story slipped beyond the ship. The station was alive with voices, banners of alien empires fluttering above the docking gates. Merchants of every kind shouted their prices, smugglers slipped into shadowed alleys, and guilds fought openly for control of the markets. It was here that Tomasz, careless with his tongue, told a merchant of Myra's deed. By the next day, the story had spread across the station like fire through dry fields. Aliens crowded the markets, repeating the tale with disbelief. A human servant refused a fortune, scoffed a scale-darn trader. Lies. No creature rejects such wealth. A soft-skinned Lyrian diplomat disagreed. But the human captain himself confirmed it. He says she never even touched the coins for herself. The crowd roared with laughter and doubt. Some called it a trick, others a fable invented by Darren to raise the price of his cruise services. Still, curiosity grew. When Darren arrived at the council hall of Vera Station, a group of alien leaders confronted him. Tell us, human, a tall Veran demanded, his crystalline eyes flashing. Is it true that your worker walked away from 250,000 credits? Darren's voice was steady. Yes. I tested her loyalty. She returned it all without hesitation. The chamber filled with murmurs. Some laughed outright, others leaned forward in suspicion. Impossible, a merchant declared. No being is beyond greed. She must have been watched. She must have feared punishment. Darren shook his head. There were no guards. The chamber was empty. She was alone. Yet she chose honesty. Silence followed his words. The alien leaders glanced at one another, unease flickering across their faces. One of them, a short, green-skinned trader, leaned closer. If what you say is true, then humans are dangerous. Dangerous. Tomash muttered beside him. Yes, the trader snapped. Because if they value loyalty more than wealth, then no bribe can control them. And if no bribe can control them, then they are unlike any other species in this galaxy. The thought spread quickly. By nightfall, whispers turned into fear. Some aliens believed Myra's act was rare, unique. Others feared it was common among humans. The idea that a species existed who could not be bought unsettled them deeply. Meanwhile, Myra walked through the station markets, unaware of the storm her actions had caused. Vendors stared at her as she passed. Some whispered to one another, pointing. She ignored them, focused only on gathering supplies for the ship. When she returned to the Aurora, Tomash met her at the gate. Do you know what you've done? He asked. She looked at him blankly. I've done my duty. He shook his head. No, Myra. You've shaken the galaxy. They're talking about you out there. They don't understand how you could walk away from riches. They don't believe it's possible. Myra frowned. Why does it matter? I only did what was right. That, Tomash said grimly, is exactly why it matters. Because most of them cannot imagine such a thing. That night, Darren stood at the bridge, gazing out at the sea of stars. The galaxy was beginning to notice something different about humans. Not their strength, not their weapons, but their choices, the quiet values that no empire could buy. He whispered to himself, they thought humanity's power was in our ships and our courage. They don't yet see that it may be in something far greater. And far away, across the stations and trade routes, the name of one quiet woman began to travel faster than light. The Aurora left Vera's station behind, its engines glowing bright as it entered deep space once again. But even as the stars slipped by, the whispers about Myra did not fade. Instead, they grew louder, spreading along trade routes and through secret channels. On distant worlds, merchants spoke of the honest human. Smugglers laughed at the tale, certain it was a trick. Yet among the guilds and councils, the story stirred unease. If one human worker could resist fortune, what might an entire human fleet resist? Darren stood on the bridge, watching reports flicker across the display screens. Rumors, notes, coded messages, all carrying the same question: are humans truly different? Beside him, Tomash frowned as he read the incoming transmissions. They don't believe it, Captain. But they fear it anyway. Some say Myra is only one strange human. Others think all of us are like her. Darren's eyes narrowed. Fear spreads faster than truth. And fear can be more dangerous than any fleet. Myra entered the bridge quietly, carrying a tray of tea. She set it down near the captain's chair without a word, then turned to leave. Darren stopped her. Myra, he said, do you know what your choice has done? She looked confused. I returned what was not mine. That is all. That is not all, Darren said firmly. Your act has shaken the faith of merchants, traders, even rulers. They see something in humans they cannot control. You've started a storm. Myra lowered her gaze. Then I have brought trouble. No, Darren said softly. You have revealed truth. Trouble comes from those who fear it. 2 weeks later, the Aurora was summoned to a neutral world called Farron Prime, a desert planet known for its council chambers. The invitation came from the Trade Guild, the most powerful merchant alliance in this part of the galaxy. They want to question us, Tomash muttered as the ship descended through the dry atmosphere. Not us, Darren corrected. Her. He glanced at Myra. She blinked in surprise. Me? Why me? Because you've become the symbol, Darren replied. And symbols are feared, questioned, and tested. The council chamber of Farron Prime was vast, carved into the side of a mountain. Aliens of many species filled the stone seats, their eyes glinting in the firelight. At the center stood a raised platform where Darren, Tomash, and Myra were led. The guild master, a towering insectoid with jeweled eyes, leaned forward. His voice clicked like metal against stone. Human captain. We have heard strange tales. We are told that your servant was offered riches beyond measure and refused them. We are told she returned them untouched. It is true, Darren said calmly. The guild master's eyes narrowed. No being refuses fortune. Not unless there is some hidden gain. Was she promised reward? No, Darren answered. She acted of her own choice. The chamber filled with low murmurs. Some aliens laughed in disbelief, others shook their heads. Myra stood silently, her hands clasped. The guild master turned his jeweled gaze upon her. Human, he hissed. Why did you not take what was given? With such wealth, you could have bought freedom. You could have ruled your own house. Why turn away? Myra's voice was steady, though quiet. Because it was not mine. And freedom bought with dishonor is no freedom at all. Her words echoed through the stone chamber. For a moment, silence held the crowd. Then voices rose again, louder than before. Some shouted that she lied, others called her dangerous. A smaller alien counselor spoke sharply, if humans truly value loyalty over wealth, then no bribe will bind them. How can we trade with such people? How can we trust them? They will follow only themselves. Another hissed, or perhaps they cannot be bent, and so they are a threat. The chamber grew heated, voices clashing, alliances cracking. Darren watched calmly, though inside he felt the weight of what was happening. Myra had not only proven her own honor, she had changed how the galaxy saw all of humanity. At last, the guild master raised a claw and silenced the room. His jeweled eyes shone cold. We will watch you, human captain. And we will test you again. If this loyalty is real, then it will survive greater trials. If it is false, it will crumble like sand. With that, the council dismissed them. Back aboard the Aurora, Myra sat quietly in the mess hall. Tomash sat across from her, shaking his head. They don't understand you, he said. They don't want to. If you were like them, they'd feel safe. But because you're not, they fear what you stand for. Myra stirred her tea, saying nothing. Darren entered and looked at them both. This is only the beginning. They will test us again. Not with coins scattered on a bed, but with choices that decide lives. And when that time comes, the galaxy will learn whether humanity's values are real or only stories. He glanced at Myra. She lowered her eyes but nodded. The Aurora lifted off from Farron Prime, leaving the desert world behind. The stars stretched out before them, but now the path was different. The galaxy was watching, waiting to see if humans truly carried something no wealth could buy. And far away, unseen eyes were already planning the next test. The galaxy had started to watch the humans with new eyes. The story of Myra's loyalty was no longer just a rumor whispered in markets, it had become a weapon used in politics and trade. Some alien factions scoffed at the idea of incorruptible humans, calling it nonsense. Others whispered in fear, wondering if humans were truly different. And a few, more cunning than the rest, began to plot. If humans cannot be bought, said a silver-skinned counselor in a hidden chamber, then we will force them into a trap. We will see if their honesty can save them when greed surrounds them. Thus, a plan was born. The Aurora traveled through the belt of Korvac, a lawless region known for pirates and raiders. Darren knew the risks but also knew the rewards: rare minerals, hidden trade routes, and untouched markets. The ship carried only limited escort, for Darren had never relied on large fleets. He trusted in strategy more than firepower. But the pirates were waiting. A dozen ships dropped from the shadows of asteroids, surrounding the Aurora. Their weapons locked on, and their leader's voice filled the comms: "Human ship. Power down your engines. You are trapped. Surrender, and we may let you live." On the bridge, Tomasz cursed under his breath. "Captain, they'll strip us apart." Darren remained calm, his sharp eyes scanning the displays. "No. They want something more than cargo." He was right. Minutes later, the pirate flagship extended a boarding tunnel, and armed raiders poured onto the Aurora. They stormed into the Grand Hall, dragging crates of glowing credits and jewels behind them. The pirate leader, a scarred reptilian named Vorek, sneered as he dumped the fortune across the floor. The glowing light of riches filled the room, just as Darren had once scattered credits on his bed. "Human captain," Vorek growled, "we have heard your stories. Your people claim to be loyal, incorruptible. Today we test this lie." His sharp claws pointed at Myra, who stood silently near Darren. "You, servant. Take what you wish. As much as you can carry. All of this is yours if you betray him." The pirates laughed cruelly, their weapons ready. Tomasz stepped forward, furious, but Darren raised a hand. His voice was steady. "Do not interfere." The room grew silent. All eyes turned to Myra. She stared at the mountains of treasure. Gold coins, glowing crystals, rare metals from across the galaxy. It was enough to buy entire worlds. For a moment, the pirates smirked, certain they had won. Surely no worker could resist such wealth when offered without fear of punishment. But Myra did not move. Her voice, soft but firm, carried through the hall. "You do not understand," she said. "Wealth is heavy. It chains those who take it. Loyalty is freedom. I choose freedom." Vorek snarled. "You mock me, human. Do you think I believe such foolishness?" Myra's calm eyes met his. "Believe what you want. My choice is not for you, it is for myself." The pirates shifted uneasily. Some muttered, others frowned. Even among thieves, greed was a language they understood. But Myra's words were strange, unfamiliar, and unsettling. Darren stepped forward then, his voice carrying power. "You see now. You cannot bend us with gold. You cannot buy us with silver. Try as you will, humanity will not kneel for treasure." Vorek's claws tightened on his weapon. Rage burned in his eyes. But even he sensed the mood shifting among his crew. The story of Myra's loyalty had already reached their ears, and now they saw it with their own eyes. To betray her choice would mean betraying the myth that was already spreading. To kill them now would mean confirming their fear that humans could not be controlled. After a long, tense silence, Vorek spat on the ground. "You are fools," he snarled. "One day, loyalty will get you killed." He gave the signal, and the pirates withdrew, taking their fortune with them. The ships vanished into the shadows of the asteroid belt, leaving the Aurora unharmed. Back on the bridge, Tomasz exhaled loudly. That was madness. They could have killed us all. Darren's face was calm, but his eyes shone with a strange light. No. They could not. Because fear already held their hands. They came to test us, but instead they doubted themselves. They wanted to believe we were like them, but they saw the truth. He turned to Myra, who stood quietly at her station once again. "Your choice has become more than a story. It is now a weapon. And it may be the only weapon that can win against the greed of this galaxy." Myra bowed her head, though her eyes seemed troubled. "But Captain, I am no weapon. I only did what was right." "Exactly," Darren said softly. And that is what makes you powerful. The stars stretched out before them once again, endless and bright. But the crew of the Aurora knew the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The turning point had come. From now on, every empire, every guild, and every pirate band would look at humans with suspicion, fear, and wonder because of one woman who refused to take what was not hers. The Aurora sailed into the outer rim of the Veyron sector, a region thick with trade routes and pirate havens. Darren had sensed it coming, the day when the galaxy would test humanity not with gold, but with choices that could cost lives. The warning came as a message encoded in multiple languages, sent simultaneously to the captain. Human ship, the message began, your crew and your companion have become the subject of much debate. Many claim your loyalty is false. Others fear it is true. To settle this, the Council of 12 and the Guild Alliance demand a demonstration. Submit or face consequences. Darren read the words carefully. He turned to Myra and Tomash, his face calm but his eyes intense. This is no ordinary test, he said. They are not testing greed anymore. They are testing courage, strategy, and the strength of our principles. Myra looked up, steadying herself. Then we must show them what is right, no matter the risk. Darren nodded. Exactly. Prepare the ship. We leave for the neutral zone of Zarkan Reach. That is where they will meet us. The Zarkan Reach was a collection of floating stations, neutral in governance but heavily monitored. By the time the Aurora arrived, dozens of alien fleets had gathered, their warships lined in formation like blades ready to strike. The galaxy's mightiest powers had come together to test the humans. Darren's crew stood ready, tension heavy in the air. Engineers ran final checks on engines and shields. Tactical officers studied enemy positions. But Myra remained quiet, observing the approaching fleets, her calmness unshaken. The Guild Master of Farron Prime appeared in a hologram projection above the bridge. His jeweled eyes glowed cold. Human Captain, he said, his voice sharp and commanding. We have watched your actions. Now we place the lives of your crew and companion in question. Yield your vessel, and no harm will come to you. Resist, and you risk annihilation. Darren's hands rested lightly on the console. We do not yield, he replied firmly. We do not act out of fear. Your fleets will find no weakness here, only humans who choose to do what is right. The Guild Master's eyes flickered, showing a mix of anger and disbelief. So be it. Let the demonstration begin. The alien fleets advanced, moving with precision to box in the Aurora. Fighters swarmed the station, weapons ready. Boarding tunnels were prepared to capture the ship from multiple sides. But Darren did not panic. He activated the ship's cloaking and diversion systems, creating illusions of movement that confused the enemy sensors. The pirates from Korvac had underestimated him once, now the fleets of the galaxy were about to learn the same lesson. From the bridge, Myra observed the enemy ships. She called out small adjustments for shields, suggested evasive maneuvers, and coordinated crew rotations to keep everyone alert. Though she had never commanded before, her insight proved invaluable. Tomash glanced at Darren, surprised. She sees things I cannot. Her calm mind keeps us one step ahead. Darren nodded. Yes. Trust her instincts. That is part of what makes humans different. The aliens tried every tactic, traps, threats, and offers of wealth to betray the captain, but each attempt failed. The crew of the Aurora stayed disciplined, moving as one unit, acting with precision and loyalty. At one point, an alien commander sent a message directly to Myra. You are alone. Take the chance. The captain cannot protect you all. Myra replied simply, I serve because it is right. That is enough. The words spread through the enemy communications. Confusion rippled across the alien ranks. Ships hesitated. Officers argued. The human ship, small in number, remained resolute, showing no greed, no fear, no compromise. Darren watched from the bridge, feeling a rare pride. The galaxy had expected the humans to break under pressure. Yet here they stood, unmoved by threats, unmoved by promises of wealth, and unmoved by fear. Hours passed. Slowly, the alien fleets began to retreat. They realized that brute force and trickery would not bend humans. Loyalty and courage had created a shield far stronger than any weapon. The guild master's hologram appeared again, his expression unreadable. "You have survived," he said finally. "Not by force, not by luck, but by the strength of your principles." It seems the stories were true. Humanity cannot be controlled. Darren bowed his head slightly. And they never will be. As the alien fleets withdrew, the Aurora stood alone in the stars. The crew cheered quietly, relief washing over them. Myra returned to her station, calm as ever, but the pride in her eyes was unmistakable. Darren turned to the two of them, Myra and Tomasz. Today, the galaxy saw what humans are. Not just weapons or technology, but values that cannot be bought or broken. That is our greatest power. Myra nodded. Then our choices have already changed more than we know. Darren smiled, his gaze drifting to the endless stretch of stars ahead. Yes. And this is only the beginning. The galaxy will never look at humans the same way again. The Aurora sailed onward, its hull reflecting starlight. Across the void, whispers of loyalty, courage, and honor began to ripple through the sectors. Humanity had shown that true strength was not only in ships or weapons, but in the unwavering choices of its people. And far beyond the stars, the galaxy would remember this day, the day humans refused to bend, the day loyalty became a force stronger than any fleet. The Aurora sailed into the calm regions of space, its hull reflecting distant starlight like a mirror of silver. After the confrontation in the Zarkan Reach, the galaxy had begun to change its view of humans. Not all were convinced yet, but the stories were spreading, faster than any fleet or fleet's message. Darren sat on the bridge, eyes scanning the stars. His crew moved quietly, maintaining the routines that kept the ship alive and ready. Myra worked alongside them, her calm presence steadying everyone. Tomasz, ever alert, reviewed communications from far-off systems. "Captain," Tomasz said softly, "the reports are coming in. Systems across 3 sectors are talking about what happened. Humans, they say we cannot be bought. They call it impossible." Darren nodded, a rare smile forming on his face. "Good. Let them talk. Let the galaxy learn something new." Myra approached, carrying a small tray of supplies. "Captain," she said, "I hear the messages. People are amazed. But some still doubt us." Darren studied her quietly. "Doubt is natural. It is easier to doubt than to believe. But belief will follow proof. And today, we have given the galaxy proof." In the following months, the Aurora became more than a ship. It became a symbol. Across the stars, beings who had once seen humans as reckless or weak now watched them with caution, respect, and even admiration. Traders offered fair deals, councils sought advice, and rivals paused in fear before acting. Myra's act of honesty, the simple choice to return what was not hers, had started it all. But it was more than her courage, it was the principle behind it. Humans had shown that strength was not only measured in firepower or numbers, but in unwavering values. Even pirate fleets began to reconsider their raids. Some attempted to attack, only to find that human crews worked together in ways alien species could not predict. Loyalty and trust among humans became a form of strategy, stronger than any weapon. Darren observed it quietly. "We changed the galaxy without firing a shot," he said one evening. Tomasz shook his head in disbelief. "Not just without firing a shot, Captain. We changed it with truth. With honor." The story of Myra spread beyond systems. Children in schools learned of her calm courage. Leaders studied her actions. Alien traders debated whether any being could truly act as she did. And humans themselves began to see a different kind of pride, not in power or wealth, but in the integrity that guided them. Myra, however, remained humble. She continued her duties aboard the Aurora, refusing special treatment, ignoring praise. To her, loyalty and honesty were normal. To the galaxy, they had become revolutionary. One day, Darren called a meeting in the observation deck, a place where the stars stretched endlessly above them. He gathered the senior crew, including Myra and Tomash. "You have all done well," he said. "Not because of victories or battles, but because of the choices you made. Today, humans are seen differently. Tomorrow, the galaxy will remember that it was loyalty and integrity that created the change." Myra looked at him quietly. "Captain, the galaxy will still try to test us." Darren smiled. "Yes. And we will meet every test with the same principle. We do what is right. Always. That is humanity's true strength." In the months that followed, the Aurora continued its voyages. Darren made careful alliances with new civilizations, alliances built not on fear, bribes, or force, but on mutual respect and trust. The galaxy had begun to see humans as a species that could not be predicted, controlled, or bought. Even old enemies began to pause before acting against humans. Stories of Myra's honesty, and the crew's unity under Darren's leadership, had spread farther than any fleet of warships. "The galaxy is watching us differently," Tomash said one evening as they charted a new course. "Yes," Darren replied. "They see our ships, our skills, and our courage. But more than that, they see what guides us. That is something no one else has." Myra stood nearby, watching the stars. "And someday," she said softly, "they will understand that strength is not just in power, but in the choices we make every day." Darren nodded. "Yes. And that understanding will last far longer than any battle." The Aurora sailed onward, past planets, through star clusters, and beyond the reach of old maps. Its crew, quiet and steady, carried with them a message: humans were not to be underestimated, bribed, or ignored. They could be challenged, tested, and even threatened, but their loyalty and integrity were unshakable. Across the galaxy, whispers grew into recognition. Traders, leaders, and councils began to speak of humanity with respect. Tales of one quiet woman who refused fortune became the story of an entire species. And Darren, watching the endless stars, understood it fully. Humans had not only survived the tests of the galaxy, they had changed it. One choice, one act of loyalty, had sparked a legacy that would be remembered for generations. The galaxy had learned a truth it could not forget: humanity's power was in its values, and nothing could ever take that away.